Okay, so I have some election day reflections. No, I'm not going to get political. This is actually talking about how election day, when you think about election, we're talking about choices, and there's nothing more I like to talk about than choices that you have during pregnancy, labor, and postpartum. So let's talk choices. My name's Leslie. Welcome to my channel. This is where I talk about birth, faith, and family. I am a disciple, wife, mom, and childbirth doula. And today I will be just sharing a couple of reflections on how election day is like your Labor Day, is like your child's birthday. And no, I won't be getting political. So it's just a couple of reflections, 3 little points that I want to share with you that I hope are helpful tips to help you prepare for the day that you bring new life into the world. Okay, so let's dive right in. Number 1, the importance of being informed. So, regardless of how you voted on November 3rd, I'm sure you were informed about your candidate. You got the information and you casted your ballot. Or maybe you didn't. Either way, the importance of going into your actual Labor Day, going into birth, is about being informed about the choices that you get on that day. Being informed about the choices that you get to make in advance about how labor starts, about how labor progresses, about what you do to manage the intensity of contractions while labor is progressing, and what happens afterwards. What about newborn care? What are you doing postpartum? All of these steps along the way, you have choices to make for you. And so the most important thing that I would say in the way that election day is like your Labor Day is that it is so important for you to be informed. I often talk about the BRAIN acronym, knowing the benefits, the risks, the alternatives, what your intuition is, and if you decide to do something not now or nothing at all, knowing that those are your options when it comes to whatever choice it is that you're presented. And asking the question, because most of the time things are choices and sometimes they don't feel like they are. Sometimes if you get a recommendation from a healthcare provider, you may think that that is the end all be all, but this is your care and you have choices in here. And so remember that the choice is yours. So be informed about what your options are. And if you're not informed beforehand, make sure you're asking questions during your pregnancy, during your labor of your healthcare providers, just before things are being done to you, asking, okay, well, what are the benefits of this? What are the risks to this? And what are my alternatives? Can I have more time? Things like that. Make sure you feel fully informed before moving forward with your decision. Okay, so number 2, how election day is like your Labor Day. People often say knowledge is power, but I heard someone say this one and I've just held on to it. It's applied knowledge that is power. There is knowledge in and of itself just means that you know something. But if you don't do anything with what you know, then there's really no power in it. And so I always say that in the same way that number 1, you get informed about your candidates, about your options, about your choices, about what they stand for, about what's more aligned with your values and what you are hoping to see for your country, right? For your government, for all of those things. Just like number 1 is being informed, number 2 is to apply that information, to apply that knowledge to when you cast your vote, right? Well, in labor, it's the same kind of way. Yes, be informed, educate yourself, know what your choices are, ask questions, ask questions, ask questions. Now, step number 2 is really taking that information and applying it, because therein lies the power that you have, right? Knowing that you can voice your opinion, knowing that things are your choices along the way, knowing that you have options about different things throughout your labor is so, so important. But applying the things that you learn, for example, what is it to know that it's important for you to stay healthy and active during your pregnancy if you don't do it? If you know, hey, I should be active, I should be working out, I should be taking a walk, I should be doing some of these exercises, I should be doing some Kegels or some squats even. And listen, I am the number one, I'm preaching to myself right now because I'm the number one person. That's how I felt about this pregnancy. I felt like there's so much knowledge, there's so many things that I know, and I just haven't done. Staying active being one of the hardest ones. So sometimes I literally will get on all fours and go after my son or have him come after me just so I can say, okay, well, at least I did something. I will sometimes just start squatting with him and just to do squats in front of him or do them while I'm feeding him just to get some type of activity into my life because I know that I haven't been as active with this pregnancy as I was with my last one. And so there's a space for giving yourself grace there, but really taking that knowledge and applying it is what makes all the difference, right? So taking the knowledge about like knowing that if I am active, if I do the squats, if I do the stretches daily, I won't feel as much soreness. I won't feel aches in certain places. I will naturally just feel more flexible, more loose, and more prepared for that day. Also, during that day, things that maybe some things that you've practiced during your childbirth education classes or things that you've read up online about different comfort measures that you can try. Applying that knowledge, applying what you learned on your actual labor day will help immensely. So having your partner learn some counter pressure or what kind of massages are good for that time, or what kind of learning about different natural induction methods, right? If you want to make sure that your labor starts spontaneously and you're not induced, learning some of those natural induction methods is great, but if you don't apply them when you're approaching, kind of your cutoff, then what is it to know it? What is it to have all that knowledge if we're not applying it? So that's why my number 2 is about applying the knowledge that you have, and in there lies so much of your power. Number 3, about how election day could be like your Labor Day, is that those closest to you have the biggest impact. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, there's a lot of concern about the presidential election. There is worry, regardless of which side you are in support of. There is concern, there is fear, there is just a lot of emotions about the outcome, right? But we have to remember that the way that our government works is that there's federal and then there's state and local government. So we've got our federal government and then we have our local government. Local government is going to have a bigger impact on your actual day-to-day life than federal government will, just given the way that our government is set up. Local governments are the ones that determine, if your streets get plowed, how often they get plowed, the amount of money that goes towards roads. I live in the Northeast, so that's why these are the things that I think about. School options, all of that kind of stuff has to do more with your local government. And so that is what I mean by when the closest ones to you are the ones that have your biggest impact when it comes to election day. So making sure, yes, it is, definitely encourage you to make sure you cast your ballot for federal government, for the presidential candidate. At this point it's too late if you haven't. But what is important, what's even more important, what will affect more of your day-to-day life, of what impacts you, will be who your local representatives are. Who is your senator? Who is your mayor? Who is your governor? Those things will have much more of an impact on your day-to-day life and policy that governs your everyday life than those of the federal government. And so that is what I mean by those, in that same way, parallel reflection to your Labor Day, is that those who are closest to you on that day, those people that are in that room, those people, who is your support team? Who is your healthcare provider? Who is your partner? Do you have any additional assistant like a doula or somebody else coming in to support you? Those people closest to you are going to have the biggest impact on your experience. They're going to have the biggest impact on how you experience your labor, your birth. Okay? And so that's another way in which some election day stuff is like Labor Day. Now, I would say that it is just so important who you pick to be on that team. And that's why I encourage you to pick the number one, strongest, most almightiest being ever, God. Pick God to be on your team. Pick God to be there with you, and make that such above everything else. I have found that to be the best decision I made for myself in terms of preparing for labor. That was the best vote I've ever casted. Best thing I ever did was check off the box that God would be present for my birth, and that I made it intentional to include him all along the way and keep him closest to me. You know, the word says that if you draw near to him, he will draw near to you. God isn't turned away from us. He's always turned to us. We're the ones that turn away. And so I have felt that I have personally experienced that being closest to him has made all the difference, because he is the Almighty. He is the all-powerful. He is the all-knowing. And so even when I'm not all-knowing, because I don't know everything, even when I don't feel like I have all the power, no matter how much knowledge I'm applying, right? And even when I don't feel like I'm all that strong, and these are feelings that you may sense at some point during your labor, like you get to a point where, wow, like this is intense. This is, you know, often moms get to a point where they're like, oh, I'm ready. I'm ready to give up. This is the end. That's actually normally when they're just about ready to push. So I always say those keywords tend to give me a signal that, like, oh, great, that means we're probably near the part where your adrenaline's gonna kick in and you're gonna push. But that being said, we get to those points where we feel like we don't feel like we know what's going on. We don't feel like we have power. We don't feel like we have strength. And God is all of those things. And having him there and keeping him close, that'll make all the difference. That his love casts out all fear. And so that's the biggest thing. The biggest thing is to keep fear out of the room. And I would say that's the biggest thing. I think my biggest reflection on election day this year has been with there being so much fear around this. And everyone's saying, oh no, that's okay, that's expected, that's normal. It's the same thing people say about labor. And I say it's not normal. It's not normal because it's not what God has for us. God did not give us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. And so that is what I'm praying and believing for all of you as you go into your labor days, as you go into your births, the birthdays of your children. I am just praying and believing that God will meet you there. And so that's my son. So I'll just leave you with one final thought. This quote that says, the pessimist sees the glass half empty, the optimist sees the glass half full, but the psalmist sees that the cup runs over. And that's where I'm at. That's where I'm at in terms of just all of this stuff going on, all of the uncertainty going on with the world right now, is that we can choose to see the glass half empty, we can choose to see the glass half full, or we can choose to rely on God and know that he always gives us more than enough. And so whether it's what you're thinking about election day or the upcoming birth of your child, just remember that when it comes to that day, you did the best you could with what you had. You put forward your best effort to do what you can. Trust your body to do the rest, and trust God to see you through. And because he always does, and he always will. With that, I will leave you guys until the next video. I am praying for you and believing that all will go well on your journey to motherhood. If you liked what I shared here, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you get alerted every time I put out a new video, and I'll see you in the next one. God bless you. Bye.